All right, today we're going to talk about some of the MSR stoves we have in the gear shop. We got Torey. He represents MSR, and he's going to tell us more details about these stoves.
As we're talking options, we're going to have something that's more of a lightweight category. If you're just kind of doing basic water boiling, that's where I'm going to go straight over into the POCKETROCKET 2. So with the POCKETROCKET, what's nice about this stove is it breaks down nice and small. Once I flip everything down, makes it really compact. Couple this together with just either a lightweight aluminum or titanium pot, kettle, teacup, so forth. You just got a really nice ultralight option. The stove itself is pretty basic as far as cooking applications go. It's great for boiling water in that application. As far as going down to a simmer or doing more of that complex cooking, probably not my first go-to option. So when we look at the canister configurations, the mixture of the isobutane as well as propane inside makes it for it being an all-weather or all-season style canister. So it's going to work well in colder temperatures. However, there are temperatures that you'll go down to that will affect these stoves. And it doesn't matter what stove that you're using out there, whether it be an MSR, Jetboil, Primus, so forth. The issue that you're going to have is the canister itself. As the temperature goes down, you might open this valve up all the way and you have this little teeny tiny flame. There's not much that you can do about it other than sleep with these canisters in your sleeping bag, put it into some liquid water to bring the temperature back up. So with a stove like the POCKETROCKET 2, it can be affected by cold temperatures. Everybody always says elevation affects it. Well, the higher you go up, the colder it gets. If you think about it, the higher you go up, there's less pressure. This canister should work even better the higher you go up, but that cold temperature keeps the gas inside compressed. So as we do look at the cooking application with the POCKETROCKET DELUXE, with this, again, phenomenal boiler. You're going to have a bit of a concentrated flame out of this with the smaller burner head. One issue that we typically have with a canister style stove like this is the wind. Basically, the area between the bottom of your pot and the top of that burner head, as the wind picks up, you're just transferring a lot of that heat and energy away from the bottom of the pot. We try and mitigate that as much as we can by putting a windscreen on here. But eventually over time, it's just going to go out as the wind picks up more and more. Okay, so just real quick on the POCKETROCKET, pretty straightforward to light it up. I can take it down to a nice simmer here in this really nice 70-degree room. So I could take it down to a really nice simmer or go all the way up if I'm going to use it in a boiling application. So again, very, very simple to use, very simple cooking styles. This would be optimal for boiling up some coffee in the morning or adding some warm water into my freeze-dried foods.
You know, I've run the same setup with this and like you said, this in a titanium cup, early season, like not worried about weather, wind, worked great.
It's a good lightweight option.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, when weight's key, the POCKETROCKET 2 is a great option. Okay, so if we want to continue in that lightweight fashion, the POCKETROCKET DELUXE is a phenomenal option. Now, what makes this more of a deluxe option than the POCKETROCKET, first and foremost, the big thing that you notice off the bat is the burner head. So we have a much larger distribution of flames on the top. So it's better if I am using larger pots and pans or skillet, really any type of cookware, where the application is more of I'm making food, I'm not just rehydrating food. The second piece of a change that you'll notice on here is, one, this big silver piece on the side. So we actually do put a piezo igniter on this stove. So the piezo is that little sparker that you'll see. Traditionally, you'll see on these stoves kind of a little button that you would push in to ignite the stove. With that being said, we wanted something that was a little bit easier to use in colder temperatures. You weren't worried about the plastic of a button to break, so put this little metal flapper on here made out of stainless steel, so nice and durable. The other side of the stove, it does feature a pressure regulator. So now the benefit of a pressure regulator on a stove like this is once you actually get the flow going, it's going to be much, much less affected by that cold temperature. But the other big benefit of a pressure regulator is it's way better for cooking. If I want to take it down to that really, really nice, low temperature, I'm the sauce boss cooking temperatures, a pressure regulator really helps with that. Also think if I'm out here in North Vegas and it's 110 out and this has been sitting in the sun, you might barely crack that valve right here and you've got a blowtorch on your hands. Regulator is really gonna reduce the amount of that pressure that's allowed to come through here. So in that sense, a pressure regulator is phenomenal, more in the cooking application. So nice click. Fire action, again, we could take it down to a really nice low simmer setting or go up into that higher boil application. When you do look at the top of the stove, again, to mitigate that effect that's caused by the wind, we do put this ring around on the top. What that's going to do is once you put your pot on top, it creates a little bit more of a swirling effect, or an eddy if you would. So I'm not losing all that heat. It's still retaining a little bit of it. So it's a tiny bit more efficient than what we get with the regular windscreen or the wind clip. So just a little bit better in those temperatures. Overall, the big features that you're getting in the POCKETROCKET Deluxe over the POCKETROCKET, you're actually getting the pressure regulator, the piezo igniter, as well as just a nice lightweight option, very, very similar to what I would get in a more complicated stove. All right, the next stove we're gonna talk about is the WINDBURNER. Now, the WINDBURNER is our introductory stove system. So when we're talking about our canister stoves, when I reference a stove system, I'm talking it's gonna be our stove, the canister, as well as my cookware. They'll all nestle inside one piece. So you can think of several other stoves on the marketplace that are like this. Now, the stove system that we introduced with the WINDBURNER, what's gonna make this a little bit different than what you traditionally see on the canister style stove is instead of having a traditional open flame, we utilize a radiant burn on top of this stove. So if you look at this series of layered mesh, when we light this stove up, you're not gonna have that traditional open flame. You're more gonna have that radiant burn happening inside of the stove. The important features on this stove does feature a pressure regulator, giving us a much better cooking application, so easier to take it down to those low simmers, as well as going up to those higher boils. So when I do light up the WINDBURNER, much like the other stoves, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the valve until I hear light audible sound, and then I know to light the top. Now, because this isn't a traditional open flame, you may have some difficulty lighting it the first time. It's great to use matches, a lighter, but it's very hard to tell if the stove's actually lit because there's no flame coming out. So what we're gonna look at is on the top of the stove, there's this very, very lightweight metal bar here. That's gonna glow orange before anything else on the stove. So visually, I can tell that the stove's actually lit, and then I could go ahead and set my pot on top and then crank it up. So there's that red bar, or orange bar activating. I can tell that the stove is lit. At this point, I could go pot on, crank it up, make some coffee. With the WINDBURNER, this stove utilizes something that we call primary air. Now, when we talk about a stove like a POCKETROCKET or a traditional sit on top canister stove, these stoves use what's called primary and secondary air. So majority of the oxygen that's used for combustion actually comes in through these little holes on the bottom. The rest of the reaction actually happens between the top of the stove and whatever pot that I'm using. So when the wind picks up, it is affected by basically that wind, and now it's not going to work as well, or eventually the stove will go out. The benefit of using a 100% primary air source is as it sucks 100% of the air in through the base, I can completely lock the top off and away from the elements. So what that's going to do is it's going to give me a windproof stove, hence the WINDBURNER. The big thing with this stove though is you'll notice these exhaust vents going around the side. That's what's allowing the stove to breathe. If I were just to take a regular pot or pan and set it on top of the WINDBURNER, without having anywhere for that air to go, unfortunately the stove is just going to go out. Don't need to worry about the stove exploding or anything like that. It's going to choke out before it heats up too much. We have seen people try and use some modified add-ons with that. We wouldn't recommend it. That's why we're doing more pot and pan options with this.
No, so I've used this for quite a few years. There's some features that I like about it. If I'm expecting any weather, any wind, I kind of go with this over the POCKETROCKET. It's got some features that I like. It has the cover and the handle, so I don't burn myself. And then the one thing I really like too is it has the measurements inside. So if I have different mills, some take 10 ounces, some take 12 ounces, whatever. I have it in there, and I know what I'm doing. So, you know, it all goes in one can, and I'm good to go.
When we look at the reactor, now we're getting into a stove that was designed for a specific customer. This was for more of our kind of hardcore alpine user. The benefits of this stove over the rest of them: one, this was the first stove that we utilized that primary air combustion off of, but also this is the first stove that we actually had that radiant burner on. When we look at the material inside of the reactor, it is much different than what we have on the WINDBURNER. This is a very specific style foam inside of it. It is a metal foam. Once we light this up, you'll see it's much different than the WINDBURNER. But what this stove is designed for is for that person that just needs to boil water, melt snow. This is not something that we're gonna toss some spaghetti in here, because you're gonna have completely fried on the outside and totally raw in the center. Not necessarily a stove that we recommend if you're doing anything fancy out there, but if we're just trying to boil water, melt snow in some pretty extreme conditions, this is an unbelievable stove for that. Do one of you guys want to light this?
No.
I'll do it. I've never, is it the same thing?
So what you're gonna do is you give it a little bit of a twist until you hear it. Striker, you're just throwing it down.
Whoa!
My eyebrows.
There goes the hair on my fingers.
So really what's unique about the Reactor 2 is when you turn it on, there's one setting and it's on. You cannot simmer with this stove. It's designed to boil. So as you can see, we can't pass on an awesome opportunity for some good marketing, so MSR right off the top. So what's phenomenal about this stove is even while it's exposed without the lid on it, it's incredibly wind resistant, just right off the bat with that radiant burner. With the Reactor, when you turn it on, you barely turn this a quarter turn and it's on full blast. With the WINDBURNER, you actually have to turn this 1.5 twists before it turns on, and that's what kind of allows this to be a really good simmer control, because such a large range of motion, you could change the different temperatures really, really easily on that. All right, so just like with the WINDBURNER pots, the Reactor pots are specific to the Reactor. They're not interchangeable between the two stoves. The Reactor's burner head's actually much larger than what we see on the WINDBURNER. So the bottom of both of these pots, they're actually gonna have a really nice heat reflector on the bottom. So what that's gonna do is it's gonna transfer that radiant heat around the sides of the pot, which just efficiently heats up not just the bottom, but the entire pot itself. The Reactor pot, just like what we see on the WINDBURNER, this is gonna have the exhaust all the way around. You do also have those measuring heights inside here as well. So makes it very, very user-friendly. Also, on the top of the pot, we do have a straining lid, as well as just a nice little breathing apparatus, so you don't have to pop the lid open if it slows down on that flow rate. But gives me a really nice pour action, and then the stove secures nicely up and over the top with the wire clip. That's the Reactor.
So let us know if you guys have any questions on any of these MSR stoves. We'd be happy to answer any questions for you. Thanks for watching.